What's up? Hey, Paper Room.
Paper Room.
We're back for episode, we don't know, because we skipped one and now we're thrown off a little bit.
20, I think it's 26.
I think it's so too, 26.
You know, we're just in our late 20s and we lost count.
That's what happens to young adults so much.
But hey, if you're watching on YouTube, you might notice that we have a special guest here today.
What's up?
If you don't know who this guy is, it's because he's always behind the camera.
The man behind the camera.
He's the one that actually makes this happen.
Right.
Because if we didn't have a camera guy, then
we would not have Instagram clips.
But
just Spotify.
Yeah, just Spotify.
But welcome, Matt.
What's up, guys?
So excited for you to be here,
It's cool to be here, for real.
It's crazy that you're the man behind the camera. You're on staff BT, production, videography. You do all kinds of stuff. And we'll get to the topic a little later, but we're not even talking about production.
No, we're not.
So I'm excited for you to be here to hear from you and your heart about the topic we're revealing shortly. Not yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Love you guys.
So before we get into our topic, I have a little interactive segment question for y'all.
Snap.
I did not tell the guys what question it was going to be.
So you're not answering this question, just us.
I can answer it too.
All right, cool.
All right, so the question is...
You're answering it first.
What is your worst travel memory?
Oh. Worst travel...
Doesn't matter, car, plane.
It doesn't matter.
Hiking.
Yeah, I think it would define what's worse, like inconvenienced or like literal like bad, like accident or something.
Or it could be like, oh man, that was like, it turned out funny, but in the moment it was kind of like annoying or whatever.
Well, one of the most annoying things when traveling, especially through airports, is like delays, right? So one time, a friend of mine, he was having his bachelor party in the Dallas area. And so I was trying to fly to Dallas, and sometimes it makes more sense, you think, to go the cheapest way possible. So I went the cheapest way possible, flew from Harlingen to Houston to Dallas, rather than paying more money and going from McAllen to Dallas straight up, right? So I was like, I'm going to save, I think it was like at least $200 or something like that. I was like, yeah, $200. I'll save that. I'll do a little layover, not that bad. So my plan was to make it to Dallas at like, I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I got delayed 8 hours in Houston.
Ew.
I was so frustrated because then our wedding party of dudes was like waiting for me to get there so that we can go, have a bachelor party for our friend. And so I was really frustrated. And there's not much to do. And I'll say this, like sometimes when you're delayed that long, like if you have a 6-hour delay or layover, or 4-hour layover, like you can leave the airport, you go experience the city a little bit, get some coffee. But like we literally didn't know. Like I'm just sitting there and every hour update, another hour, update, another hour. So it's like I had no idea. So I was stuck there for 8 hours, and yeah, it was a zero fun experience. But sometimes they give you like a free voucher for like a free flight, but I don't think we got one of those that time. So yeah, delays are literally the worst, and it happens somewhat often. But that's probably one of my worst ones.
Yeah.
So it's funny because what we're talking about, the trip that we went on, it happened in Houston as well. So we were flying back from...
Don't go to Houston. Just kidding.
Honestly. Nah.
I got delayed in Houston too. That's
really?
literally my story too.
If you're from H-Town, we love you.
So we ended up flying into Houston. And from Houston, we're going to come back to McAllen. And when we got to Houston, the pilot was like, hey, we're kind of delayed. Make sure you get your flight, but there's this like faster way. And it's like down. I've never been down on like the airports where it's like the train and stuff's going on.
Oh yeah.
Like there's nobody out there, so they told us to go down that way. And I'm leading the team pretty much. Like I'm just the one in the front. I have no business leading nobody. So I ended up walking down the hallway, and everybody else was following me. And there was this pilot / airline attendant that was saying, "Hey, go this way," but I was like, the person's told us to go that way. And sure enough, I was like, what do? I ended up going back, and sure enough, everybody followed me. And somehow, some way, we ended up back through security. So we had to go back into security. We had we had an hour layover, and we ended up getting back into the terminal with like 15 minutes to spare. Oh, man. And I was just smiling. I was like, what are you doing? How do I do this? But sure enough, I had like the whole team behind me, and they're like, what are you doing? I was like, honestly, I don't know. But that was like the worst experience, I think. But we made the flight. Everything was good. But
It's scary.
You just never led like a group astray before, like for leading a mission team.
I did. I just did. the New York mission trip.
What happened there?
You're gonna make me say it?
No.
Okay.
You don't have to say it.
Yeah.
But it was funny. All
No,
right.
it was great. It was great.
What's your worst travel?
So I thought you were gonna say
Right.
coming back from
That wasn't too bad.
Ben throwing up in the back of the car.
Oh yeah. I wasn't even thinking about that one. That wasn't bad for me.
I wasn't
That was
even
just-
there, and
that was
that's like
bad
my worst
for
memory.
Ben.
Like,
I feel like every podcast we bring up Ben, but it's totally cool.
Yeah.
I remember in the first half of the paper room, we always brought up John Mark Comer, and now we always bring up Ben. But that was kind of funny. So a couple of years ago, we drove to Atlanta. For context, in case you don't know where we're from McAllen, Texas. Deep South. 16-hour drive. We made it. Like, we stopped a couple times, but it was like a straight shot. You know, like, we didn't stop to sleep halfway through. So 16 hours. And then 16 hours back 2 days later in a van,
Wow.
church van. You know, there's like 11 of us in a 15-passenger van. So I think we stopped like in Louisiana on the way back to eat at Five Guys or something like that. And then, you know, Ben falls asleep, and so I didn't consider anything. So then like an hour before we're about to make it, or maybe like an hour and a half before we're about to make it home. So like literally like 32 hours, like 30 hours into the trip, into the driving, Ben was like, "Hey, you guys got to pull over." Nick was driving. I was like, "Nick, Ben wants you to pull over." It was like midnight already. Nick's like, "No, I'm not pulling over." So then Ben literally grabs a bag and just starts throwing up.
somebody gave him a
No
bag.
Yeah, just in the middle of the van, like at midnight, bro.
Like
It
a
was-
backpack?
No, like a HEB bag or like a
A
grocery
backpack.
bag.
That would have
It
been
was
really
so
bad.
bad. I was like, I didn't think he was gonna throw up, but sure enough, here we are, man. Ben just throwing up in the back of it. But it wasn't bad for me. I was just
Yeah.
like kind of laughing.
It's
I was
just
like,
now it's a funny memory.
Yeah.
We're always like, "Hey, pull over."
that's probably his
It's a joke.
first, trip.
Yeah.
But good times.
Yeah, good times. So I asked that question because we're talking about the impact of short-term mission trips.
Love it.
And I feel like, I'm going to kind of put myself in the shoes of somebody who's never been on a mission trip, but kind of around the church world. So, about missionaries. Like, I think that's probably the more, I guess, popular term is like, okay, somebody that's a missionary, like you're leaving to Africa, like the most stereotypical way you can think of a mission regarding the church. So putting myself in the shoes of somebody who has never been on a mission trip, who kind of only has that knowledge, my question would come up of like, what is the purpose of going somewhere else on a short-term mission trip for like a week, maybe even 2 weeks, but I think a week is more short-term. What's the purpose of that? Like, what's the point? And so I'm glad that we're talking about this today because that can seem, us going on mission trips, like it's BT does that, we go to all these different kind of seemingly random places.
Yeah.
We post pictures, we're helping either kids or families from all these different places, serving, and then we just come back and then life kind of goes on. So then I don't feel that there's a whole lot of talk around like, why do we do this?
That's good.
What impact is it really making if you're only there for such a short period of time? And then like what happens next? Like what happens when you come back? Like that's it, and then you just go the next year. Like that's kind of how my framework was thinking about missions before I went on a mission trip. And even after my first one, which was New York in 2019, I still kind of felt like that's it. Like I didn't want to be there longer because I'm out of my comfort zone. But at the same time, like I should be there longer because then I'm not like doing enough to make a big enough impact.
Yeah.
So that's our topic today.
I love it.
Danny, do you have any first thoughts on?
Yeah. So the first thought that came to mind right now, actually, it's kind of funny. We shouldn't be promoting this show on the Paper Room podcast, but one time I promoted a movie that was not good, apparently. But there's an episode of The Office where they go to CC's, Jim and Pam's daughter's, like a christening or whatever. And then Michael Scott and them, they run into like that young adult group that's about to go to Mexico on a mission trip. And then so Michael Scott feels like motivated, empowered to want to go. So him and Andy jump on the bus, and then they're all excited. But then like not even 30 minutes into the bus ride, they're like, wait, what the heck are we doing? And one of the funniest scene in that moment for me is Michael's like, what are we going to go do? And Andy's like, I think we're building a house or something like that, or building a school. And Michael Scott like, do we know how to do that? And so there's just like this weird stereotypical thing of mission trips. It's like like why should we as a church or individually personally use our resources to go on a trip when we can just like give them more money or give them more something, like they know how to do it there, or if they don't know how to do it, like do we know how to do it there? And so it can seem like a very weird aspect for a church to want to do a mission trip like that. And so kind of to start off, what I love to do is kind of share from BT's perspective as our church of why we do mission trips. The three of us have each been a part of one. Isha and I have been a part in New York City. Matt, you went to Honduras a couple of times, and I can't wait to hear kind of your perspective on that. But just to give like a 30,000 foot view of what we do. So BT stands on 4 pillars as our mission statement. I would test y'all, but we'll see. I was joking. But our 4 pillars of BT are biblical teaching, relevant worship, authentic community, and global concern. So that's one of our main aspects of our mission statement is global concern. And we do that in a couple of different ways. One, we partner financially with like-minded gospel-centered organizations, whether it's a church or an orphanage or an organization that's doing gospel-centered work in that community. So when we find these relationships and partnerships, BT chooses to come alongside them as our way of giving back to gospel organizations. So, one thing that we challenge our church is to practice the tithe, right? A tithe biblically is you give 10% of your income to the church so that we can function. As a church, we do the same thing. We give out, and I truly believe this, more than 10% outwards of our finances to gospel organizations. If you want to go check them out, beach.church/missions. On there, we have a list of all the organizations that we partner with. It's like 30 of them. Some are local churches, some are local missionaries that are on the ground there. And some are organizations, orphanages like Big Heart, which is right across the border in Reynosa. So what we do when we choose mission trips, because the easiest thing to do is you see the promotion of it and you think like, okay, cool. Like they're going to like the most like dopest cities or dopest countries in the world. Like that sounds like a vacation, right? Because what we do on mission trip branding or mission trip promotion is like New York City, Honduras, Togo, Africa, China, like go these places. And so from the outside looking in, if you don't know the philosophy and vision of these things, it can seem like we're just picking random spots that we just want to go visit, right? Like that could easily be a thought process. But every trip we do is all based on either current partnerships that are in those places or potential partnerships that might come. And so if we hear about a potential partnership like, man, this pastor or this local church is doing some great stuff, how can we come alongside them to just help them get further down the road? And here in a little bit, we're going to talk about one, like answering the question of the impact of short-term missions, but also like if some of y'all know my story already, and I'll kind of flesh that out a little bit more. But so much can come out of this, whether it's a week, 2 weeks. You can define what short means. I know some people who literally like they move to a location for half a year. Like that could still be a short-term mission trip, so to speak, because you're not there long-term. And then we'll get into some scripture towards the end. But I just wanted to share that we choose places based off of current or potential partnerships. So when we choose New York City, we're choosing Queens Church, which is a church that's already established there in New York City in the borough of Queens. And so our job is not just like, all right, let's just go blanket New York City. Let's go tell 8 million people about Jesus. Like that's not going to happen in a week, right? So our goal is how can we help this organization that we are partnering with just get a little bit further down the road. And so one of the things that we do, and then I want to hear from you guys, is, for example, for Queens Church, in the training of our mission team, I always tell them, you guys are not members of BT Church for the week that we're there. You're members of Queens Church, because nobody in New York City knows about BT Church or cares about BT Church. So our job is to help people understand that there is a church in this neighborhood that wants to love them. And so we're highlighting and promoting Jesus and Queens Church. Like if we can let people know that Jesus loves them and Queens Church is there to love on them too, then that's our goal. Because like Isha said, we go for a week and then we come back, right? And so then it's hard to establish those relationships long term. So our goal is to help relationships get established with the people that are currently there. And we get to bring in some encouragement, some motivation, some people, some volunteers to help them get further down the road. So that's a little bit of our vision as BT of why we do mission trips, which I love being a part of. But what I want to hear from you guys is, I think you've been to New York twice. The first time you went was in 2019. And then you've been to Honduras now twice as well. So normally what we do as a church is we pick like a random Sunday in the fall, like normally in November. We call it Mission Sunday. And on that Sunday, we promote the different organizations that we're a part of, but then also the trips that we're going to attend the following year. Normally for BT, we do about 3 to 4, sometimes 5 trips a year that people can choose to be a part of. So when you guys heard about the trips, like maybe you saw New York City, Honduras, Mexico, whatever, what kind of motivated you to want to be a part of those trips initially? Like, why did you choose New York City? Why did you choose Honduras? What was some of that motivation for y'all?
Matt?
So when I first heard about the mission trips, Honduras really stood out because Herb, one of my buddies, he's the one that introduced the idea, because he went, I don't know how long ago he went, but he told us the experience, and he kept on talking about, like, hey, get your passport. And this was probably like a year in, and I was like, I'll get my passport whenever, not thinking how long it actually takes, especially that after pandemic and all that stuff, everybody's gonna need their passports. But then it finally got time to the meeting, and then we went to the meeting, and I believe Colin was the one leading the meeting, and he just talked about it, and then he told Herb that, hey, like, what kind of things have you seen, or what do you expect to happen over there? And he was just kind of explaining what goes down over there, and sure enough, I just felt real called to just go out there and experience it. The first trip I went around was more importantly just to be able to document something in that, also to just be a witness to, like, what God's doing over there. So from the first time that I heard about it to when I actually got there, it was like insane. So really, really cool stuff.
You kind of have you talked about getting a passport. You had a little difficulty with that, right?
This previous time?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was.
What happened there?
So when I first got my passport, it took, again, her was telling me, hey, get your passport. By the time it was already like 2 months.
Don't procrastinate, people.
2 months to get my passport in before the trip. And then I was like, God, I need my passport. So I believe it was me and 2 other people that both got our passports at the same time. But what ended up happening was we literally got our passport the week before the trip. And it was insane.
That's stressful.
And didn't you have to, like, drive to Houston for that or something?
Oh, okay. So this is a whole nother experience. This one was my
worst travel experience part 2.
Yeah. So this one, I had to travel with my girlfriend Deborah. She ended up coming on the trip with us, but her passport didn't come in time. So we had to literally drive to Houston the day before the trip.
For hers, yeah.
For hers. So we drove to Houston. We got the passport. It was a 7 a.m. appointment. So we had to leave here at like 4.
Ugh.
Or I don't even know what time we had to leave. So we had to go early in the morning to Houston and then come back. And it was the worst experience
And then y'all flew
ever.
like the next day or
The
something?
next day
Oh
we flew to Houston. So I was like, what? So we went to Houston, came back, and had to go.
Oh my gosh.
But luckily, like, everything went out really well.
Yeah.
And we got the passport. She had to contact like the congresswoman here in McAllen. So luckily everything went out like super well. So
Nice.
she got a whole crazy passport too. It has like plastic on it. It's like a whole different thing.
Come on. So part of your story is that is built on relationships. You knew someone that went to Honduras, and you're like, all right, like, I'm hearing about this. I want to go experience it, which is definitely a powerful thing. What about for you? What made you choose New York City?
That was my experience as well. Like, right now, as I was thinking about the question, I was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I just like thought it was something I was supposed to do as a Christian, go on a mission trip. And I think that was part of it, definitely. But I just realized you and Summer were over there. Like, you guys had just moved over there. You had just planted Queen's Church. And you guys had left an impact on me, in student ministry. And so I'm over here, like, starting in student ministry for the very first time, like, as a 20-year-old, leading these students, and now students that are, somewhat my friends, they're going to go on the mission trip. And you guys are over there. So I'm like, of course, like, I want to go see what's happening over there. Like, I know that my church, BT Church, is helping y'all start up this church over there. We're being a part of it already financially, obviously praying, supporting you all. So why wouldn't I want to go see in person what's going on over there? Because it's so different than seeing pictures on social media. We weren't even in contact, I think, for a long while. Like, I wasn't really messaging Summer very much. Like, it was kind of like, y'all go do it, like, kind of separate a little bit, cut the cord, so that y'all can focus and do your work over there. So it was kind of like, well, we all want to go see, like, we want to see what God is doing over there in New York. And of course, like, the city has always been in my head, I have never traveled out of state other than like Kansas and like Virginia and states like that for cross country. So New York obviously is like an attractive place to go for travel, but that was like, it's whatever. I want to go see Summer and Danny like at Queen's Church. So that's definitely what was my main motivation, as well as having students go on the trip. Like I want to help lead them too. But it was my very first mission trip ever. So I had really no idea what to expect. And the second time that I went, motivation was completely different, because now you and Summer were here, and of course Queen's Church is still over there. We're still gonna go help them. But a year ago, I felt the Lord place on my heart like more responsibility for me to go and do more things, just in life. But I felt very specific, like you need to lead a mission trip, like just you need to do it. And New York, I've been there. And I have a heart for Queen's Church now that was already established. So I did it.
That's awesome. I love that. And so I'd love for you guys to share, some of the things that you got to be a part of. Like what are some of the projects that you got to be a part of while you were there for those for that short-term week? But also, what's something that maybe you saw that encouraged you while you were there? You're like, man, like I didn't really expect to see this, but I saw this and it really encouraged me in my spirit, or maybe it challenged me to do something, or to maybe think a different way. So what are some of the things you got to be part of, and what's something that encouraged you?
So when this second time we went out there, we went out with the intention to deliver guitars. So they wanted to build a music program. So we were with the intention, it was like, oh, we're just going to drop out the guitars, hang out for a bit, take off. That's our mission, right?
Which is a wild thing to say. Like y'all went to Honduras to go drop out the guitars.
Yeah.
Not like no
It's
easy
like
task.
Hang out for a bit.
Like, and then like
y'all didn't drive to Weslaco or something. Like,
yeah, and we all had to take
country.
we had to take the guitar as like a carry-on. So we only had to like pack enough just for the under, right?
True.
But that was the initial plan, and then God said like, nah, you ain't gonna do that. So he pretty much said that there was supposed to be a mission team going that same week we were going, but because of storms or something, they pulled out. So when we were going, they asked us like, hey, like, could you bring candy? Could you bring this? And we pretty much were able to like substitute ourselves into their mission trip. So we ended up becoming a whole like mission trip in like 5 days. So
Crazy.
we ended up like delivering like not goodie bags, but bags for the widows. So it has like essentials, shampoo, toothpaste, all that good stuff. So we had to prep the bags, deliver them. We walked with them, talked to them. As well, my favorite thing is we would, in Chahuatillo, there's like 5 villages within the mountain, right? So we ended up in each village there's a school. So in each school, we threw a birthday party for all the kids. Oh, wow. So within the months that we haven't been there, we celebrated their birthdays. So in that, we'd hit a piñata. They would go crazy for that. As well, they have like little like toys or candies based off their birthdays. So they would come up, we'd talk to them, we'd sing. And what we did this year that was different than last year was we were able to actually like bring a message to them. Wow. So her was able to come up with a sermon and talk to them. And it was so cool to see how like in awe they were about it, and even the people on the outside, because if it's a party, everybody's pulling up, right? So it's cool to see like the parents and everybody just be so like, wow, like this is really really cool. Come on, man. So that was what we did.
I love that. That's so good. Man.
That's awesome. That's really cool. For New York, I think majority of the work we did both times that I went was surrounding around kids, like the community. So it's either like a church project like VBS or the sports camp that we did, or community projects. And so it's sometimes both, depending on like the day, how long each project takes. So first and last time I got to work with kids. And I've done that before here, like with our VBS that we have here at BT. But I guess the biggest difference for sure from doing VBS here and doing a VBS like in Queen's Church is the diversity of the people that you have coming to that event. Candace, who was the kids director for the week that we were there, or that gave us the training on that Sunday, laid it out so beautifully but so intensely so that we could understand the expectation of like a lot of these kids have never heard of Jesus before, ever. A lot of these families that are coming to drop off their kids have probably never even stepped foot in a church or have experienced a gospel-centered church before. And here back in the valley, like, you have churches around every corner. You have a lot of gospel-centered churches here in the valley. So it's not super surprising to have a bunch of kids that have been to church before, have been to a VBS before, or have heard of the name of Jesus. Like, it's just totally different environment and culture in New York. So that, of course, like, it ups the ante. Like, okay, we've really got to be on our game, like, to have gospel conversations. And of course we do that at every VBS, but those projects that we did, either the sports camp or VBS, is really, really like, you've got to be on all the time, ready to have a conversation like that, because kids are, they go through something, or they get hurt, or they fall down, or something happens, and that's your opportunity right there. Right. And you're talking to a kid, so you've already got to have, like, you just got to be ready. So we would do that, and then this past trip that we went on, we also did serve projects in the community. So we would go have park parties, give out free iced tea, free popsicles for the kids. This was my first time being a part of that, of doing the serve projects, because my first trip was just sports camp. Oh, yeah, that's right. Sports camp focus, and maybe handing out cards, and that was it. But park party was something completely different, because now we're stepping into their territory of locals that live there. This is their playground. This is their space to have fun, to be safe. So it was a completely different kind of mindset, but also the same mission. Like, what can I do to help serve these kids, even if it's like a free iced tea? But a lot of our team had amazing conversations, connections with parents that were there, moms, dads that were there with their kids. And I think a lot, the pattern that we saw was, our team would say, like, we just asked them how they were doing. Like, we just asked them, like, hey, how's your day going? And then they would open up and like spill like so much of what was going on in their lives, which is just evidence that, you know, it's not very often that somebody will slow down their life to start a conversation with them.
One thing that Larry and I always talked about, Larry, pastor of Queen Church, the difference of the North and the South is different, like wall barriers. Like in the South, people are, you know, to throw shade at all of us, we're all very fake. So it's like, hey, how you doing? I'm good, man. God's good all the time, brother. Like, amen, right? Like, that's just kind of our Southern response. Yeah. So our first wall is very high. Like it takes a lot for somebody to get over that wall, that we're going to let them into our world, our issues, our problems, our struggles. And then once you get to know that person, you know, you go on a fishing trip, whatever, then you start sharing stuff. Your second wall is very low. And so in New York, it's opposite. To where, like, right away, people are like, they may not like know who you are, but they're gonna open up to you quick by just asking a simple question like, hey, how's it going? It's like, all right, well, if you really want to know, like, this is how it's going. Like, you may not know who they are. They have no prior relationship or nothing. But if they see that you ask an initial question, your initiative in the conversation, they're going to open up to you. And so it's just so different because people crave that community and they want that genuine, authentic community. But I love that. And so it's interesting for me because I've been both on, obviously, a short-term mission trip like goer, but also I've been on the receiving end of mission teams. Because when we got to plant Queen's Church, each summer that we were there, we received, 6-7 mission teams a summer. And so I loved getting to experience that. And just to kind of bring some perspective, it's like, oh, cool. Like, y'all ran VBS for Queen's Church. Like, that's not a big deal because VBS happens here all the time. Like you said, right. This was the first time that Queen's Church ever ran VBS in their own space, which was huge. And they're a new church still, so they don't have volunteers galore that they can use. And so if we were able just to be extra bodies in the room, that helps them run the event more effectively to where when parents come in, they're able to see not just one person with their kids, but they're able to see 3 people leading their kids, so they feel more safe. So then they're more encouraged to want to come back. Like, all those little things play a role in just helping somebody want to be a part of the organization that's there taking place. And so it's huge. And then with both of you guys, you shared, it's all based on relationships. Like, I love that you guys, because you went to Honduras a couple of years ago, like with the church. Yeah. And then you went back like on your own, where
Yeah.
like you guys were like, hey, this organization that we went to go visit, we kept a relationship with them, we stayed connected,
Yeah.
and we heard they need guitars. All right, let's pull up. Like, who wants to go? Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't like a church organized trip, which is good because now you guys are just being the church of going serving another church. And so I love that some of those aspects took place of you guys just building relationships and continuing to go on a short-term basis, which helps that relational aspect. One thing I want to ask, with those two, experiences that you all had, what is maybe a way that you felt God challenging you to do something maybe different, or maybe you were challenged by it now that you're like back home, post mission trip?
Definitely this time around, obviously like the scenery is beautiful. And when I went out there, I was like, okay, God, this is great, but let me focus about the people. Let me actually be intentional and not look at the mountains, but look at the people. Like, let me just be present here.
Wow.
So that stuck with me coming back, in the sense of like, there's so much happening in our everyday lives, like so much like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. Like, oh, like I want this, I want that. But it really took me in a place where let me be present where I'm at with whoever I'm at and look at this person. Let me talk to this person. Like, what God, what do you want me to say to this person? And in every scenario, I always say, God, allow me to be present. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do? And that was the biggest takeaway, just to see every person as I saw that kid in the mountain, like, let me be 100% intentional, be full, like, let me just be here.
I think a beauty of that is one, like, and I'm just like assuming, because this was my experience too in New York. Like, for you it was the mountains, for me it's the buildings. Like, to me there's no city like New York City. Like, just the beauty of it is insane. Like I remember growing up as a kid, I thought San Antonio had a big downtown, and I'm like, bro, New York is like 100 times bigger. But just seeing everything, like, I was just enamored by the beauty of the city. But as you go back, then, okay, cool, I've seen that already. Yeah. Let me focus on the people. And so I think part of maybe for your story, like, you saw Honduras, you're like, when you go somewhere you don't know, you're just overwhelmed. But then you go back and you're able to like then zone in and focus. So I love that. Like, God, I don't want to look at the mountains, I want to look at the people. And I think that's a beauty of going back to the same place that you've been to. Like, I think it's cool. Like, go if you feel led to do multiple trips to different locations. Like, love that experience, whatever. But I also think there's a beauty of building a relationship and going back to a similar place. Which you got to experience. Well, both of y'all did actually, but yeah.
And it was so cool because when we went, we kind of had the same team that we went the first year. And when we were walking down the streets, it was so crazy to see the kids be like, hey, like, you're back. Like, you were supposed to come in October. Like, they were looking forward to us to come back. And the fall. And it was so crazy to see that. But yeah, it was beautiful.
Love that.
Yeah, for me, what was obviously, like I said, very different this year was that I was leading the trip. So I was having to I was being very analytical about myself and my role, because it was so weird to me that I get to show up at church at Queen's Church and help be available for the kids, but also be available for the team, but also like take pictures there because we need pictures of our team. So it took me a couple of days to kind of like figure out, how do I be everything here this week? So I just ended up, like, I'm going to be accepting of the fact that I'm here for my team. Like, yes, I'm here for Queen's Church, but they're looking to me as they help Queen's Church to help them. So, we would share wins almost every day of, how the serve projects were going. But I felt all my wins were coming from my team, like seeing them use their gifts. I told them, like, I don't want to share. Like, I don't want to talk because I don't want to. It's you guys. Like, you guys are the ones that are helping me grow as a leader. And the wins that I'm seeing is God using you guys specifically in each of these projects. So it's a very unique opportunity for me to see, and also for me to grow and be challenged, because it's not very, very often that I get to lead a team this massive of 23 people. In a city this huge, a city this fast, that I've only been to once before, 4 years ago, as they are serving kids. Like, it's extremely challenging, but I was so hungry for it. I was so hungry for God to teach me, to grow me, so that I can do it again, so that I can not just like it's not about me being a leader. It's about like, how can I best help these people get the best experience of a mission trip, even if there's so many outward things I can't control. So many. So it was definitely not just challenging, like, oh, I have to, do all of these things, but it was a challenge to feel like confident in like, okay, this is what it is. So I'm going to, do the best that I can do despite whatever happens on the outside. But then the fruit of what we're actually doing comes through in, again, like the team. Like, I get to help them succeed in whatever, tiny issues we might have with each other, like tension, you're there in the heat, or whatever. Or, so if somebody's feeling doubtful or, like, it's helping the team be a mission team. That was extremely special for me to do. And now coming back home, I'm just kind of like, okay, well, what happened? Like, what, again, like asking the question, like, what kind of impact did I really make, like, on Queen's Church, on those kids? But the fruit of it is seeing the kids at the end of the week, like, we would hear testimony of the kids saying, like, crying that they don't want to leave VBS when they showed up the first day not wanting to be there.
Right, 100%.
A lot of that kind of joy and excitement for VBS came from the joy and excitement that our team had, not just to be there, but to do something bigger than just dancing and to spread the gospel.
That's so good. And that dancing and joy can be what might lead a little kid to Jesus, which is amazing. So, we're looking at the question of what's the impact of short-term mission trips, and even, I think, taking that a step further, like, what's the purpose of this? So I just want to read a couple of verses really quick. Romans chapter 1, verse 11, Paul says this: "For I want to very much see you, so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you, that is, to be mutually encouraged by each other's faith, both yours and mine." 1 Corinthians, Paul again, chapter 16, "I don't want to see you now just in passing, since I hope to spend some time with you if the Lord allows." Ephesians chapter 6, verse 22, "I am sending him to you for this very reason, to let you know how we are and to encourage your hearts." Philippians chapter 1, verse 8, "For God is my witness, how deeply I miss all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus." Colossians chapter 4, "I have sent him to you for this very purpose, so that you may know how we are doing, and so that he may encourage your hearts. I am sending you Onesimus, a faithful and dearly beloved brother, who is one of you. They will tell you about everything here." This is just kind of my hot take on Paul, but if Paul lived in 2023 and he had the technology that we have today, he would be on multiple short-term mission trips, because that's what he was already doing, right? He was literally a missionary. He did 3 different missionary journeys throughout the book of Acts, but he was also limited by his time. And so we can read in his letters how deeply he loved people and how he wanted to go be mutually encouraged by other people, not just him go share the gospel, but also them encourage him in their faith as well. He wants to go meet them in person, hear about how they're doing. And so part of short-term mission trip is not just to go and experience a city you've never been to or whatever the case may be, but to go be mutually encouraged. I was always mutually encouraged whenever we received a mission team, and they would come and they would help us and they would love on us, and they would support us, because it made us feel like we're not alone in this planting of Queen's Church, that we got people across the country and across the world that are praying with us, that are partnering with us financially, but also that are bringing people to come help us out. Because when 25 people showed up to Queen's Church, we got to send 15 to one part, 10 people to another part, and now we're expanding ourselves in the neighborhood. And so it's just huge to see that. And I love that Paul was somebody who just had that passion, desire for other people, to go and love on them, and also to be loved by them as well. And so I think short-term mission trips are huge, because you develop relationships. You went to Honduras, some little kid who recognized you last time recognized you again, and then if you go back, they might recognize you again, right? And so you start to develop these relationships over and over and over, that can be really, really impactful. And obviously for me and my story, if we never went on a short-term mission trip to New York City, then I would have never been a part of Queen's Church, right? And so I think some of it too is you're experiencing certain things that might bring clarity to your calling, which could be huge. And so the last question I want y'all to answer is this: what's a quick word of encouragement that you would give to somebody who's maybe contemplating, should I go on a short-term mission trip?
Well, I want to just say that the verbiage in the verses that you read were like someone being sent to encourage. Like, I love that, because that's what we're doing. We're being sent, but we're also, like, if we're here, like, we're sending someone. If it's not us, we are, like, you know, if we want to go on a mission trip, and we have people that want to support us, they'll help us get there.
Right.
They're sending me. Like, God is sending me. Yeah. They're sending me. They're helping me get there. So for the people that are here that have never, you know, maybe they're afraid. You know, maybe somebody's like kind of afraid to take that big step. Maybe it's a financial kind of fear, or just a fear of leaving, of going somewhere far away, of entering into a completely different culture, environment. I would say to practice here, practice being sent here. Right, yeah. Where can you go to encourage someone that's not in your church, that's not in your house, that's somewhere a little bit more challenging for you, that you would have to step out of your box to enter someone else's space, to meet them where they are, not to elevate yourself, but to bring them up. And I think that practicing that while you're here is already like, one, you're doing the job already. Like, you're on mission if you're a Christ follower. But I didn't do that. I feel like I didn't do that at all. I was waiting for a mission trip opportunity to, like, oh, let me have a gospel conversation and share with someone about Jesus, because I don't know them and I'll never see them again. So I don't have to worry about it. Right. But practice that now. Like, do that right now where you are. That was a long sentence. Sorry.
Love it.
But
word of encouragement. Someone.
I love what you just said right now, because I feel I came from a place where, like, oh, like, all these big churches want to go here for vacations or whatever. And I'm like, what about here? But little did Matt know, it was like, there was already happening. It was already going about. They just didn't have to promote it. They didn't have to share it. And one thing from that, coming to BT, I was like, wow, like, they're already doing that. And to see them do it on a bigger scale, like, for the glory of God, is so insane. So from my personal experience, I think it was more finances, as well as, like, I don't think I'm equipped enough to go out here. Like, I don't think I am enough to be presented with these people, or like to share the gospel with them or whatever. So I will say, like, if you're thinking about that or considering going on a mission trip, but you're scared of the fact of that, I'll say God's got you. Like, you don't even have to worry about finances. You don't have to worry about like, he'll use you in whatever way he wants you. If it's at the airport, or if it's in the mountain, you know, like, so no matter what, like, don't worry about all that stuff.
I love that. My last word of encouragement is, if you're a young adult and you're single, meaning you're not married yet, it's the perfect time to go on a mission trip. For sure. Right? You got no one, like, you know, you don't have to ask your spouse or someone like that. You probably don't have a whole lot of money, but you know, drink less coffee. Amen. $6 a cup of coffee every time you go. But start finding those practical ways of what you can do to go on one, because, like, the time is now. Like, go try it out, check it out. You know, let us know. We love to be able to encourage you in that way if you have questions about that. But love to be a part of a church that sees missions as a main pillar of who we are. You know, not just something that we do as well. But anyway, appreciate you guys sharing your story. Matt, welcome to Paper Room.
Thank you so much, bro.
Thank you for all you do to capture us.
Both capturing and in the moment as well. So this is kind of awesome, man. Isha, thank you so much for your wisdom, as always. Love you guys so much. As always, share, follow on IG if you're not doing that yet. And we'll see you all next time, Paper Room. Love you.
Deuces.
Bye.